Hi guys, I'm Ava, and today I will be teaching you the qualities of living things, including metabolism, homeostasis, and the 8 life processes. The summary of today's lesson will basically be going over the definition of life, the qualities of living things, which are the 8 life functions such as nutrition, transport, cellular respiration, excretion, synthesis, regulation, growth, and reproduction, as well as metabolism and homeostasis. We might not finish today's video, but I will make a part 2 coming up if we do not finish. What is life? Life is defined by the processes an organism exhibits. Qualities of living things for nutrition specifically. Nutrition is the activities followed by an organism to acquire materials from its environment and prepare the obtained materials for use. There are 2 basic nutritional types. There's autotrophic and heterotrophic. Autotrophic organisms synthesize food materials from the inorganic materials within their environment. This can be performed through photosynthesis and chemosynthesis. Chemosynthesis is just the process that utilizes the inorganic molecules to synthesize organic food molecules. Meanwhile, photosynthesis is the process which occurs in the chloroplast. It requires light energy as well as inorganic raw materials such as water and carbon dioxide in order to synthesize organic food materials. The formula is CO2 plus H2O becomes C6H12O6 plus O2. It results in carbohydrates and oxygen. Meanwhile, the other nutritional type is heterotrophs, which heterotrophic organisms utilize preformed organic substances. These preformed organic substances are from autotrophs, and this process includes 4 steps. Ingestion is the first, of taking in food. Digestion the second, is breaking down food molecules to help absorb it into the organism. Assimilation the third, is the incorporation of materials into the organism's body. And lastly, egestion, the removal of indigestible or indigested foods. This is a photosynthesis diagram for autotrophs. As we can see, I wrote on the right too, as we can see, the leaf of a plant is an autotroph, acquires water and carbon dioxide from its environment, as well as it utilizes light for photosynthesis. The water, which is absorbed from the roots, and CO2, which enters through the stomata of the leaves, sorry for my typo there, I meant to spell LEAF, is synthesized into carbohydrates and oxygen due to energy light capture. CO2 and H2O are the reactants, and O2 and C6H12O6 are the products. Oxygen is released as a waste product. So basically, we see that in order for photosynthesis to occur, there's to be water, carbon dioxide, and light initially, and then that is transformed later on to sugar and oxygen is the waste product. Qualities of living things for transport specifically. Transport is the process which involves the distribution, absorption of materials into and throughout an organism. There are 2 basic transport types. Active transport is the movement of materials against their gradient, which is from low to high concentration, and this requires the expenditure of energy. Active transport results in the inequality of materials. Meanwhile, passive transport is the movement of materials along the concentration gradient, therefore high to low concentration. This process is devoid of energy as materials move without the expenditure of energy. There's an equality of materials. Active transport versus passive transport. As we can see to the left, active transport is from low to high, and sometimes active transport uses proteins embedded in the plasma membrane to assist the movement against the gradient. Example is carrier and channel proteins. Meanwhile, passive transport is diffusion or facilitated diffusion along with the gradient, so that means it goes from high to low, and sometimes passive transport also uses proteins as well to assist transport, however it's along with the gradient. Qualities of living things for cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is the process which includes the chemical processes followed by an organism in order to maintain its life functions. These chemical processes involve organisms receiving energy which is derived from food materials. There's 2 basic types of respiration. Aerobic respiration, which includes the release of energy from organic molecules, and oxygen is present in this process, and there's a high yield of ATP. This occurs in the mitochondria. The formula is glucose plus oxygen releases 36 ATP plus CO2 plus H2O. The steps for this are glycolysis to transition reaction to Krebs cycle to electron transport chain, or ETC, which we will discuss soon. And then anaerobic respiration is a process which produces less ATP in comparison to aerobic respiration, and this involves the release of energy from organic molecules from autotrophs as well, and there's no oxygen present. This process is also identified as fermentation. There are 2 types, alcoholic and lactic acid fermentation. The formula for Alcoholic fermentation. Fermentation is just glucose plus oxygen releases 2 ATP plus CO2 plus alcohol. And then lactic acid fermentation is just releases 2 ATP and lactic acid. The steps for this are just glycolysis and then lactic acid or alcoholic fermentation. Aerobic respiration diagram, I put it to the left. It basically is showing you guys that the first step, which is glycolysis, is the breakdown of glucose into 2-pyruvate. 2 NAD plus is reduced because it gains electrons, and then it becomes 2 NADH. I know you can't really see that. And then 2 ATP is made in glycolysis. In the transition reaction, 2-pyruvate is oxidized into 4-acetyl coenzyme A, 2 NADH is released, and 2 CO2 is released. The transition reaction is the only one where no ATP is made. The Krebs cycle, 4 CO2 is released, 2 ATP is made, 6 NADH is released, 2 FADH2 is released, and 4 CO2 is released. At this point in the Krebs cycle, there's no CO2 remaining in the glucose. The electron transport chain is the last. It accepts electrons from glucose, and the electron carriers, NAD plus and FAD, which are initially gathered electrons, now drop all their electrons, which provide energy for ATP. 32 or 34 ATP is created in this, and NADH regenerates into NAD plus, as well as FADH2 becomes FAD again. Qualities of living things, specifically for excretion. Excretion is the process which includes the removal of metabolic waste products which an organism produces due to their metabolic activity. Some I listed are oxygen and photosynthesis, water and respiration, and carbon dioxide and respiration. There's also a chart here. You can pause and read it. There are other types of waste for excretion. Qualities of living things for synthesis. Synthesis is the process in which larger molecules are created from smaller molecules. Dehydrogen synthesis is when it's a condensation process which means water is removed, so smaller subunits can join and make a polymer, which is a larger molecule created by monomers. This dehydrogen synthesis is an anabolic process or building up process. This water molecules are produced as a result of dehydrogen synthesis. Hydrolysis, on the other hand, is the opposite of dehydrogen synthesis, as it is a catabolic and breaking down process. Water is added to larger molecules in order to split them apart. Qualities of living things for specifically regulation. Regulation is a process which involves the organism's control and coordination of the various activities it performs, as well as reacting to the stimuli. Enzymes are part of regulation because they enhance the rate of chemical reactions. They are organic catalysts which facilitate specific chemical reactions. Hormones act as chemical messengers, and nerves are conductors of electrical messengers. Both hormones and nerves contribute to regulating majority of the processes an organism performs. Qualities of living things for growth specifically. Growth is the process which utilizes synthesized products to increase cell size along with the number of cells in an organism. The aim of this process is to enhance the development of an organism. So growth is basically either the increase of cells or the larger size of cells. Mitosis or meiosis is both the division of cells, so this helps increase the number of cells. Mitosis except as asexual division, and meiosis is sexual division, and I just wrote for meiosis. Meiosis involves 2 nuclear divisions, which ultimately results in 4 daughter haploid cells. Mitosis results in exact clones, and meiosis results in genetic variation, which is essential. Qualities of living things for reproduction. Reproduction is the process which provides the production of new species. This is necessary for the survival of species. There are 2 basic types, sexual and asexual. Sexual reproduction results in the creation of new individuals once 2 gametes meet. Gametes are specialized sex cells, and this is the recombination. There's variation due to the recombination and shuffling of genes, and this variation is essential among offsprings. Asexual reproduction is when one parent gives birth to identical offsprings or clones. The only source of variation for asexual reproduction is through mutations. Coming to an end, metabolism is the range and sum of all chemical processes in which an organism performs as life functions in order to maintain life. Metabolic pathways, the chemical reactions that take place to create and use energy. I put an image, and as we can see in the image to the right, catabolism and anabolism. In between that is metabolism. So metabolism consists of catabolic and anabolic reactions. And lastly, homeostasis. Homeostasis is a term which refers to an organism's ability to maintain a stable internal environment without implying that the internal environment is static. If an organism's internal environment were to be static, that would mean there was no change at all and temperature always stayed constant. However, that is not the case. The aim is to have a smaller range of change rather than a large one because small change is more stable. Homeostasis is the state of a steady internal environment within an organism. An example of how maintaining homeostasis works is negative feedback. Negative feedback tends to stabilize the system. This is when one thing changes, however another thing changes it back or makes it a smaller change. Examples: if blood sugar levels went high in someone, such as a person, the insulin lowers the blood glucose levels. Similarly, if the blood glucose levels are low, the glucogen raises the blood glucose level. Therefore, as we can see, there's not a big change. The last slide, here we are. The negative feedback example, as we can see, I wrote on the right. As we can see, negative feedback, if an organism's body temperature is to decrease, heating mechanisms such as shivering will be activated, therefore resulting in increased body temperatures. So, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching.